From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. We begin in Venezuela, where the Comptroller General has barred opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó from holding public office for 15 years. Speaking on public television, Elvis Amoroso said Guaidó had usurped public office and that the Oversight Office was investigating serious irregularities in his personal finances.
Article 139 of the Constitution refers to public office holders who are guilty of abuse of power or who violate the Constitution or break the law. And Assembly member Juan Guaidó has usurped public office and undertaken actions in concert with foreign governments that have done damage to the Venezuelan people and to public property, disturbing the public peace, democratic stability, and the constitutional order. An initial investigation of the personal wealth of the citizen and lawmaker Juan Guaidó showed clear inconsistencies between, on one hand, the wealth he has officially declared and his income as a member of the National Assembly, and on the other hand, the very considerable and exaggerated expenditure on his lifestyle, which a member of the National Assembly could not normally afford.
Our correspondent Madeline Garcia has more from Caracas.
So these are the measures taken by the Venezuelan state. Now we are waiting for a statement by the Attorney General in relation to this recommendation by the Comptroller General in relation to the congressman and self-proclaimed president Juan Guaidó. Guaidó has already come out and said that since in their view the government is illegitimate, there is no comptroller and no Attorney General. So they continue to behave outside the constitutional framework. But while that is happening, the Minister of Communications also gave more details of what happened in the attack on the Guri hydroelectric plant. He said it was snipers who set off the fire in the transmission area of the plant and caused this latest outage. There's also the contingency plan, which is underway to provide for communities, for hospitals, and the most vulnerable sections of Venezuelan society. We are now in the eastern part of Caracas, where water distribution points have been set up, where people can come and collect their water under a plan developed by the Ministry of Eco-Socialism, precisely to make it easier for the population.
We thank Madeline for that report. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza is continuing his trip to Africa with a solidarity meeting with Swapo, the ruling party in Namibia. Members of Swapo greeted Arreaza with a song ahead of the meeting. On Wednesday, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister was in South Africa for a SADC conference on Western Sahara, where he met leaders from several African countries. In Namibia, he has met the president and several ministers to discuss cooperation.
Countries with a history of international solidarity, like South Africa or Namibia, are supporting the people of Venezuela and President Nicolas Maduro in carrying on this battle on the international stage. The people of Africa, of the Americas, and the world supporting the Venezuelan Constitution and international law and rejecting any kind of intervention. We just came out of a meeting with the President of Namibia's National Assembly, who also expressed support and was very interested in cultural exchanges, with our experience of the system of our youth orchestras, and also with the Namibian minister, where we talked about the possibilities for cooperation in areas like agriculture, mining, education, and housing. Namibia has a housing deficit, and we have the experience of our great housing mission, so we can give the technical support to Namibia, also in energy. So we are drawing up a plan with these countries in Africa, and also in the Middle East, as part of the Bolivarian diplomacy for peace.
Russia has responded to warnings from the U.S. President Donald Trump that Russian military personnel should get out of Venezuela. The Foreign Ministry in Moscow said that Latin America is nobody's backyard. This came after 2 Russian transport planes arrived in Caracas last Saturday as part of a military cooperation agreement signed in 2001.
The Russian side has not violated anything. neither international agreements nor Venezuelans' own laws. Russia is not changing the balance of power in the region. Russia is not threatening anyone, unlike some officials in Washington.
The supposed presence of Russian or Cuban troops in Venezuela is Washington's latest argument for tightening its blockade. The country is increasingly at the center of a geopolitical dispute.
The arrival of 2 Russian military planes in Venezuela triggered a torrent of hysteria in the United States and from its allies in the OAS and Lima Group.
We're looking very much at the troika of tyranny, including Cuba and Nicaragua, as well as Maduro. Part of the problem in Venezuela is the heavy Cuban presence, 20 to 25,000 Cuban security officials. In this administration, we're not afraid to use the phrase Monroe Doctrine. This is a country in our hemisphere.
The political elite in the United States has never ceased to think that Latin America and the whole of the Americas belongs to them. If you look carefully, you will see that all administrations have conducted interventions in Latin America. They try to control the intelligence services, the military, the governments, and the economy, as well as their foreign policy. The only difference is that now they say it openly.
China and Russia tell Washington that such bullying will no longer work.
We will continue our friendly and mutual beneficial cooperation with Latin American countries. Latin America does not belong to any country. It is nobody's backyard.
I would like to remind John Bolton, if you stop tormenting Venezuela with sanctions, and if international banks unblock Venezuela's billions of dollars, the Venezuelan people will be able to buy medicine and food without the generous aid of Washington.
Since the 7th of March, Venezuela's electricity grid has suffered serious acts of sabotage. The victims know who they think is responsible.
The opposition, with their lies and distortions, are trying to provoke an intervention here in Venezuela. They think the United States will come and help us, but in fact the only ones helping us are our allies like China and Russia.
If we let that so-called humanitarian aid into the country, do you think we'll still be here? No, all this will be taken over by those U.S. leckers.
In desperation, the Venezuelan right is begging for an invasion.
I wouldn't rule it out, but nor do I think it's the most likely possibility, because Venezuela has powerful and sophisticated air defenses, as a result of its military agreements with Russia. The S-300 air defense system is one of the most modern there is. That agreement was signed in 2009, and the system was installed in 2013.
An invasion isn't impossible, but it wouldn't be easy.
The 8th summit of the Association of Caribbean States is taking place in Nicaragua as the ACS celebrates its 25th anniversary. The conference is set to end on Friday with the motto "Uniting Efforts in the Caribbean to Face Climate Change." The 25 member states, 9 associate members, and 6 organizations all attend. Our correspondent in Managua, Maria Jose Diaz, has more.
At the launch of the 24th meeting of the Council of Ministers, the Vice-Chancellor of Nicaragua addressed current issues facing Venezuela. He called on Caribbean countries to continue to adhere to the principles of non-intervention, and he criticized threats made by international countries to use force. The Vice-Chancellor said the Caribbean is a peaceful region, adding that the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which includes peace and harmony among countries, are maintained. He also called for the strengthening of Caribbean unity to address climate change. He called for the management of non-renewable resources. The Vice-Chancellor said the region must take steps to limit the emission of greenhouse gases and to adapt to the changes. The ACS members held indoor meetings. The International Cooperation Summit will end on Thursday evening.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In Guatemala, relatives of the victims killed in a truck crash are mourning as their claim remains. At least 18 people were killed Wednesday evening when a truck crashed into a crowd of people near the municipality of Nahuala. Dozens more were severely injured. The crash happened as a group of people went onto the road to check on a person who had already been hit by a car.
We went to attend this emergency. We carried out an external examination on 18 corpses that were delivered to their families today.
We are worried, but above all, we are sad. The people of Nahuala are mourning. We hope that God will accompany the deceased. We feel sorry for the people who are injured in hospitals.
Our correspondent in Guatemala, Mario Rosales, has the details.
The government of Guatemala has declared 3 days of national mourning after the tragedy which took place in the Nahuala municipality on Wednesday night. The tragedy happened when a group of people gathered on the road to investigate the aftermath of a previous crash in which one person got run over. As they did this, a truck ran over them. 18 people were killed and another 18 were injured. Initially, there was confusion about the number of victims. First, it was said that over 30 people were killed in the incident, but later on, authorities confirmed the actual numbers. A temporary morgue has been set up where the crash happened, as the injured remain hospitalized.
We thank Mario for that report. And staying in Guatemala, fears are rising concerning the proposed amnesty that would allow dozens of war criminals to walk free. It would release army officers convicted of forced disappearances, torture, and sexual violence. And it's supported by President Jimmy Morales. 45,000 people disappeared and 250,000 indigenous Mayans were killed during the 36-year-long conflict with the U.S.-backed government.
They took my father on the 31st of December of 1981. He was in town and the army grabbed him and took him to the municipal. And to this day, we don't know his whereabouts. And it's incredible that they want to approve that law because it's not right. Their remains need to be found, and I do not agree with the approving of that law.
In the face of this kind of acts committed against civilians, they definitely cannot apply any type of amnesty. It is worrying to even consider these reforms to the National Reconciliation Law, because they're definitely infringing on victims, the survivors, and all the victims that passed away so many years, so that in the end, they get justice.
Meanwhile, Guatemala's electoral court is appealing a decision by the Supreme Court that allows the daughter of the former dictator Efraín Ríos Montt to run for president. Suri Rios has come under fire for her candidacy since the Constitution bans the relatives of the leaders of the dictatorship from running for office. Ríos Montt was charged with genocide and crimes against humanity committed during his rule in the 80s. His trial was still in progress when he died in 2018. For more on the stories out of Guatemala, we're joined live by Jackie McVicker from Guatemala City. She's the Communications and Political Advocacy Officer at the Guatemala Human Rights Commission. Jackie, thank you for joining us. First, can you give us your thoughts on the controversy surrounding the candidacy of Suri Rios?
Thank you very much. I mean, in some ways, it's not a controversy. It's straightforward. The Constitution says that family members of people who took power illegally, such as Efraín Ríos Montt did when he became a dictator in 1982 and took power that way, it clearly says that family members cannot then become president. So controversy really is more surrounding the actions of the Supreme Court of Justice, which has shown in recent months that it's here to serve the interests of a certain group of people with military and economic ties. This is the same court that tried to get rid of constitutional court judges that have been upholding the rule of law in Guatemala in the recent months with the CICIG ordeal, I'll call it, starting back in January. And so really the situation at this point is that Suri Rios is running for president. It's illegal for her to do so, but she has at her service a Supreme Court which has provisionally granted her the possibility to run. That decision has now been contested through legal recourse to the Constitutional Court that was submitted by the Supreme Electoral Court. And so at this point, we're awaiting to hear a final decision.
Jackie, now let's talk about the proposed amnesty law. Who's behind it and why now?
The proposed amnesty law, there's actually two. I mean, lots of people are talking about the one main law that would see investigation and prosecution and sanctions of people who are responsible for crimes against humanity. Stop that. So this law would say all of those convicted already would immediately be granted the possibility of leaving jail. And on the other hand, no further prosecutions or investigations. That's the main amnesty law, which a couple of weeks ago, when it was in Congress for its third reading, dozens, hundreds of survivors of the genocide, of family members of the disappeared, the women from Sepulsarco, which of course was one of the major cases that sexual slavery and sexual assault and abuse of women, indigenous women, who came also to Guatemala City to protest this. At the same time, the response to that was quite strong. The major government diplomatic corps here in Guatemala responded quite strongly to that. Norma Torres, and there was an announcement the following day that there would be sanctions against Guatemala, which I think is all part of the context of and the pressure that was mounting to stop this bill. What a lot of people haven't been paying attention to, though, is that there's another bill at hand. It's also at third reading, which would allow these things. It's what people are calling the backdoor amnesty bill, because it's kind of come up through Congress. And essentially it would allow anybody over 70 years old to be released from jail. And the majority of the people, many of those of the higher military command generals, colonels, who have been convicted of crimes against humanity are well beyond 70 years old. Rios Montt was 92 when he died last year. Lucas Garcia, who's now in jail, is in his 80s. And so there's concern that although it seems to be, for the moment, a lot because of pressure from especially the international community in the United States, that the kind of amnesty bill is at slowing down. This other bill has the possibility of passing even, every week it's on the agenda. And so it could happen at any time.
Jackie, we thank you so much for your time for Telesur English.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Jackie McVicker from Guatemala City on the overall situation in Guatemala. Let's take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Peruvian police have arrested 5 men accused of gang raping a mentally ill young woman last week. The Attorney General's office said the suspects allegedly raped a 19-year-old girl, recorded it with their cell phones, and shared it on social media. People believe the men were also trying to blackmail the victim's cousin, saying they will remove the video if she has sex with them. 2 other suspects are also being investigated. Mexican people living at the foot of the Popocatépetl volcano say they are scared following the volcano's recent activity. Local residents say they feel like they are living with a time bomb that can erupt at any time. The volcano's latest powerful explosion occurred on Tuesday as it spewed fiery debris from its slopes. Authorities urged nearby communities to be on high alert.
I'm fearful. Because yes, it's been erupting on various occasions, and more than anything, fearful for the children. And nobody has come to tell us what is happening. No one has come close. Just yesterday, at about 8 at night, it bombed. And everything continues in the red phase, in phase 2 of the volcano danger warning system, and nobody has come to inform us.
Guyana's opposition, People's Progressive Party, has filed its appeal in the no-confidence case against the government. The matter, brought by opposition leader Barach Agdio, will be heard on March 29th. The opposition is appealing the ruling of the local appeals court, which found that last December's no-confidence vote was invalid. The Court of Appeals ruled that 34 votes were required to validly pass the motion and not 33. Jagdeo has asked the regional court to set aside or reverse the judgment.
Yes. Mr. Figueroa.
SADC countries have concluded a solidarity meeting on the freedom of Western Sahara, which was attended by other countries outside of Africa, including Venezuela. Our correspondent in South Africa, Matuba Malachi, has the latest.
The Southern African Development Community, also known as SADC, concluded its special meeting with a focus on how to liberate Western Sahara from Morocco's illegal occupation. Now, the meeting was attended by delegates from beyond Southern Africa and even further outside the continent. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arias was among international supporters for a united call against the oppression of the people of Western Sahara. Arias also used his visit to South Africa to reaffirm Venezuela's relations with SADC member states. He met with the president of Namibia and his delegation on the sidelines of that meeting. Now, Venezuela has been receiving massive support from African countries in its battle against US sanctions and military action threats. And speaking of the US, you'll remember Namibia is the country Donald Trump could not pronounce back in 2017 when he met with African leaders, referring to Namibia as Nambia quite several times. That was followed by contentious remarks about African countries from the US president. With all that said and done, African nations remain strong allies with Venezuela, with a shared history of overcoming colonial oppression and white supremacy. And Venezuela's foreign minister will surely leave or has left the African continent confident of that support from African countries. It's back to you, studio.
We thank Matua for that report. A hospital in Yemen was left in ruins after a Saudi-led coalition airstrike. Tuesday's attack left 7 people dead, including a health worker and 2 children. 8 others were wounded. Tens of thousands of people have died in the war between the Houthis and the US-backed Saudi-led coalition. The conflict has pushed the country to the brink of starvation.
The equipment and the hospital were completely destroyed by the strike on it and its workers. We were terrified. We were very scared.
Despite all the crimes that the enemy has committed in the past years, here they are again, beginning the 5th year by adding to their list of crimes, by targeting an internationally forbidden location, which is this humble hospital, Gitaf Hospital in Sada province.
A car bomb has killed at least 15 people in the capital of Somalia. The blast destroyed 2 restaurants, killing people who were inside and outside. The death toll is expected to rise. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. On Saturday, 15 people were killed in 2 explosions and a gunfight between Al-Shabaab militants and security personnel in central Mogadishu. Kenya has renewed its plans to shut down the Dadaab refugee camp, which houses about 250,000 Somalis. The Kenyan government has said that the camp will be closed by August because of security concerns. Many Somalis in the Dadaab camp have lived there nearly 30 years after fleeing civil war, which broke out in 1991. In mid-2016, there were 320,000 residents. However, in May of that year, the government decided to close the camp, saying it was a terrorist training ground for Al-Shabaab Islamist militants. Former Gambian President Yahya Jammeh has been accused of stealing nearly $1 billion of public funds. Jammeh is currently in exile in Equatorial Guinea and has not responded to the allegations from the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. The Justice Minister had already accused Jammeh of unlawfully withdrawing $50 million from state funds over a 10-year period. The investigation team says they have reviewed documents from Jammeh's 22-year rule. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.